Hello, and welcome to, what were we calling this, Lollash?
The briefing.
The briefing.
The briefing.
It's not going to be particularly brief, but at the end of it, you will be briefed.
That's the idea. I thought it was a clever bit of wordplay. How are you today, Sir Llama?
I am great. I have had 2 cups of coffee, my kids are at the babysitter, and I'm ready to talk about XCOM2.
So,
Skype is not behaving. Say that again.
Echo. Hello.
Hello.
Is it working?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Got sound again. Just had a little bit of a skip.
All right. Okay. Apparently there's echo, but I don't know if there is a thing. So this is completely live. This is the first time we're really doing this. It's kind of a podcasty thing. I've still got it under the XCOM Enemy Within gameplay setting. I don't know if I should move it to talk shows. But basically what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at the IGN Live E3 broadcast of the XCOM2 gameplay reveal. So basically what we're going to look at here is we'll review the footage. We'll talk about all of the main points that are important to the game for us. So what does the game look like? What does the game feel like, you know, from the environment, what do we see that's new and interesting? Like, all of that stuff, we want to break it down in full detail for you guys. So that's a thing. That's what we're going to be doing today. And I'm going to be joined by this man, or sorry, this man on top.
There you go.
Yeah, so this man down here, my illustrious co-host, my dear friend LlamaChomp. If you're not familiar with him, guys, he's actually going to be streaming in this time slot. So starting right about now, this is your normal start time, I believe.
About an hour ago is when I'm starting in July. I'll be streaming starting about an hour ago.
So I'm a robot. I don't know why I'm a robot. I shouldn't be a robot.
Skype occasionally stutters and makes your mic sound robot-y.
Okay. We might have to do something. I don't know. This is kind of a pilot as well, because it sort of gives us a bit of experience doing a talk showy style of stuff, which might be something we look at doing in the future. Anyway, I think I'm going to see it through fully before we start. Did you want to play the full gameplay footage through before we start and then talk about it? Or for the people who might not have seen the review?
Yeah, if you want. I mean, and we'll just sit and watch with them? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
We won't interrupt the developers, we won't talk over it at all, and then we'll go back through and pause at the moments we were talking about?
Yeah, so the developers are going to talk a little bit before and after the gameplay as well, but we'll just show you the gameplay section. If you want to see the full developer interview, you can check it out. I'll drop a link in chat. This is the link for the video we're using. So if you want to see all the developer commentary before and after the gameplay section, that's the link you go to. In the meantime, though, we're just going to show the actual gameplay section in its entirety. It takes about 10 minutes, I think. And then we'll actually we'll go through it and like pause it and show you all the things that we're excited about. So let's do this.
Preparations are already underway in cities across the globe. Today marking the 20-year anniversary of
Unification Day, the very beginnings of the Advent Coalition.
celebration. Thousands flock to the site of the Great Accord.
Hard to forget the impassioned message of last year's commencement address.
Earth's corrupt political body struck first against a peaceful visitor, resulting in devastation that left hundreds of millions with nothing. If not for the enduring patience and generosity of the elders.
Recent arrests of the radicals behind the assault of the Gene Therapy Center. Advent has assured all citizens that today's celebration will continue as planned.
I've heard enough. Signal gatecrasher. Take it down.
All right, gatecrasher. Advent's little circus is dead ahead. Keep a low profile and deliver the package.
Classic XCOM.
Remember, the crowd has them
This is the
distracted.
introduction to one of those city centers I was talking about. This is what the aliens in the Advent have built to draw humans to, like a moth to a flame. It's this beautiful city, very sterile, and XCOM is now here. You'll notice that they're actually in concealment, which we can talk about more in depth after if you want, but there's that cool screen shader around, and now one of the coolest things about XCOM is the flip. The switch has been flipped. You are now, in a way, the invader. You're the good invader, but unlike the EU abduction missions where you're responding to something and trying to find the aliens in the fog of war, you are now in the shadows. And as you can see here, the Advent administration is not aware that you're around. And that is a game mechanic that we really wanted to leverage, and we thought it fit really well with the Resistance theme, that you can now operate from the shadows. And it allows the players to really set up these cool ambush moments. And based on how they want to play, they can sort of break concealment. We have cool little touches like this where since XCOM is sort of the renegades entering these cities, you'll see your actual created soldiers on these holographic billboards. You're now wanted. The civilians don't trust you because the Advent is spitting propaganda that says, if you see anyone like this, report them to us. So this is the crowd here at Unification Day. Advent is keeping everyone in line after the Dark Collaborator spoke, as you saw in the intro video. And now we're moving in with our units. This is one of my favorite actions that never gets old. What we're setting up here is actually a double Overwatch ambush. So we're moving our specialist and our rookie into position. They're still outside of the concealment radius. You can see the red tiles. You do not want to go there. But you still have to be careful because the enemies can patrol, and then they can move and see you once it's their turn. But we're setting up a double Overwatch. We have 2 units in Overwatch, and now our Ranger is moving up into position. As soon as she takes a shot, you're going to see a pretty cool chain effect. So concealment's broken. And we had executed a nice double Overwatch flawlessly. But now the enemy knows where your squad is. So we're going to send our second rookie forward. She is going to deliver the package. And one of the really cool things about XCOM is that these maps are completely procedural. Not only is the geometry procedurally placed, but the objectives are procedural as well. In this particular instance, we have a mission objective of sabotage a building. So that's what we're looking to do, and Central is giving us the information about how to do that. Now it is the aliens' turn. Destruction is back and is more. There's more destruction than ever. You can see the effects and the walls going out, and if you happen to have a big firefight in a building, now floors and ceilings can also be taken out, and rooftops, which is an homage to one of the original XCOMs as well. Okay, so. A lot of you have seen the Viper in the trailer. Well, here she is in gameplay. You saw she can bind. She can also do this nifty trick.
Damn it! Someone take that thing out!
So we see an alien, that is bad news for reasons like that. But luckily, the player has some new tools up their sleeve as well. This is one of the new classes, the Ranger. And because you have scarce resources, XCOM is taking new methods into their own hands, such as melee. And she has this really awesome machete sword. As you can see, you can take it directly to the alien when needs call for it. And we have a classic XCOM moment here. 3 Advent by a car. That's like a zebra sunbathing when a lion is ready to pounce. So we're going to take advantage of that and take them all out at once. We have a lot of new grenades as well. Acid bombs, fire bombs that have more spreading fire that the player will be able to build and take advantage of. That is another Advent unit called the Turret. It's an immobile sentry gun that goes on Overwatch once you trigger its reveal. So our rookie here is trying to deliver the package, and the turret is firing at her. Luckily, she made it through unscathed, and here she is taking care of the objective. Okay, so in XCOM2, you have to be careful because the enemies can call reinforcements at any time. It can happen when you get to an objective or after, and in this case, 3 new Advent troops have been called in. So you have to get in, strike fast, and get out of dodge. And of course, permadeath is alive and well, which is a weird oxymoron. We lost one of our soldiers there, but our objective has been achieved. We've taken out the monument, which has gloriously fallen on many Advent troops. And now, so you got a taste of the Ranger earlier. One of our other new classes is the Specialist. You may have noticed he's moving around with his little pet gremlin, a robot drone that has a lot of uses. In this case, we're going to reveal hacking. So you can send the drone out to robotic units like the turret, and depending on the tech stat of your Specialist, you can get one of 3 rewards. You can either disable the turret, you can take it over and control it, or you can take it over and get optimized control where it does more damage and has more shots. So now the turret is ours. We're going to see what damage it can do. And that is just the tip of the iceberg for robotic enemies. You can really turn the tables on the aliens with future gremlin abilities as well.
All clear. Well done, Gatecrasher. We just put Advent on notice.
All right, looks like we may be in the clear. That is the evolved Berserker. You may have remembered the Berserker, a pretty dangerous melee unit from Enemy Unknown, accompanied by Advent Mechs, which is another Advent type. We have a lot of different Advent variations beyond the Trooper and the Captain that we've shown. And the Mechs here do not need to take cover. Heavily armored, heavy firepower. But the Berserker is the real danger right now. Okay, so another new feature in XCOM2 is you now can save either your critically wounded or dead soldiers from the battlefield, where you literally have to pick them up so you can get their gear. No more of getting that powered armor or that plasma rifle from Enemy Unknown just by winning the mission. You actually have to take them back. We've set an evac zone, which is now user-placed, depending on the procedural mission objective type that you get. And what that does is that calls the Sky Ranger. Once you get your units in that evac zone, the Sky Ranger comes for you.
Well, that was really...
Okay, so there's
Exciting.
your first look. Yes.
So if anybody who hadn't seen it yet, that's the gameplay trailer that launched at E3, which I was blown away by. First of all, that's my first impression. Like, when I watched that for the first time, I was like, wow, Firaxis, you have just revealed so much about this game all at once at E3, months before your release, and you're planning to do a whole bunch of IGN stuff in between now and then. I can't wait.
We were talking about doing this segment right now before we had seen the video. And we were like, I don't know how long it'll be. You know, it'll probably just be a tidbit. There won't be any meat in there for us to really dissect. And man, this thing is just dripping from the bone with tons of good stuff to talk about.
And we intend to suck every drop of marrow from this to continue the delicious meaty bone referencing there. So what we're going to do is we're going to play back through the video and we're going to pause it periodically and talk about certain elements within the game, and then at the end we'll sort of do a bit of a recap about how we feel overall. So
I'm just going to play through and I'm going to pause at each of the points that we marked, and we're going to chat for a few minutes, and then I'll hit play again. So I'm just going to play and pause through the video. So here's the first segment is the little intro cinematic. We'll start that back up.
Unification Day, the very beginnings of the Advent Coalition.
Celebration. Thousands flock to the site of the Great Accord.
And hard to forget the impassioned message of last year's commencement address.
Okay, this is the first spot I wanted to pause, because if you watch this guy walk, his shoulders are sort of pushed forward and his gait is a little bit strange, which to me is like the first hint that something's a little bit off here.
Yeah, so I really like the way that they've sort of... They're still keeping true to, like, everything about XCOM that we know so far, and this is kind of like that. This is like, okay, so a bit of a nod to Enemy Within. These thin men that we encountered, or Enemy Unknown, are still around, and they're still infiltrators, and I think... Like, immediately when I saw this guy walk out, it was just, I know what that is. Like, it's so referential, and I love it. It's really good.
Yeah, and then you take a second, you get this close-up on his face, you see spots on his neck. You see, why is he indoors at a podium giving a speech with sunglasses on? Oh, it has to be, like, the new hippie version of the Thin Man with the, you know, his hair's not all done up tight, he's not in the business suit. He's now your friend. And he's going to tell you how wonderful the aliens are, as a fellow human who loves those wonderful aliens, for sure.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's definitely human. We have nothing to worry about. This guy is obviously trustworthy.
Yep.
You know, talking about the corrupt human governments that attacked the peaceful invaders that brought, you know, aliens, spider deer that implant eggs in your chest to create babies that explode out of your corpse.
Yeah, they're totally the good guys. So here we are in the Situation Room. This is our new video display.
I've heard enough.
It's not a hologlobe.
It's not a hologlobe, but here's Central. And my theory is, and obviously, I mean, this is just a theory that I've watched this video way too many times to generate, is that scar on his cheek is from the base defense that we lost in XCOM Enemy Unknown to set up this storyline.
I absolutely agree with that theory. I also like the fact that Bradford is wearing combat gear. I don't know if you noticed this, but he's actually wearing combat armor.
Mm-hmm.
See how, like, you can see the blade? He's got a knife on his shoulder, a holster for a knife there that he can pull out and engage in close quarters combat if he needs to. And he just looks much more grizzled. He's a veteran. He's been underground with XCOM for 20 years.
Yeah.
So I'm glad Bradford is back.
And he still looks sharp, but he's given up a little bit on maintaining that baby face, which I approve of personally, as a beard owner myself. I'm gonna have to get a new uniform though, because I don't know if my old sweater will blend in with the new XCOM. You know, I've got to look combat ready all the time to be the commander.
Well, nowadays apparently, yeah. So this is another point we wanted to bring up. Op names. This is something that we sort of picked up on. They call the team Gatecrasher.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that your team will have different names? Like, I hope they've pre-recorded, I don't know, a whole bunch of names in Central's voice, in Bradford's voice, like Gatecrasher and stuff, for your op teams, so that each op has... Yeah.
We're not strike one every single time. Hey, XCOM has one team, it's strike one. But I think, like, Gatecrasher makes sense in context of this video, because they're having a party and we're going to crash the party. And I wonder if the different objective types will have different op team names.
Yeah, even something as simple as that, just to add a little bit of flavor. And that is one of the things that I really got from this video. Flavor. Like, it just... the world feels much more...
Classic XCOM.
Full.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not just a series of, you know, 500 meter by 500 meter combat tiles. The world actually feels living and breathing, which is really cool.
Yeah, so this next spot is our first look at the UI. And this is one of, like, I don't have a lot of negative things to say, but this version of the UI is too small. The icons are little. Maybe it's great for gameplay because it gets the UI out of your way, and if you have a nice big monitor, that's fine. But as a streamer who's going to stream this game, I want the UI to be really obvious to people on whatever resolution they're looking at, and I need bigger icons.
I think they would be absolutely mad not to include a UI scale.
Yeah.
It's a very simple thing to do with a static UI like this, is to have a UI scale slider which you can just bring up like 50%, 100%, 150%. And it's also entirely possible, because this is a demo version of the game, that the UI is just there to act as a functional thing rather than a finalized thing. So a lot of this discussion is going to be anecdotal, based on what we've seen, and is not necessarily representative of a final product. We should probably say something along those lines, because it is a predetermined demo. There are things that happen, and we'll explain them, that don't necessarily, or aren't necessarily going to be a thing in the game. So
the other the other thing that I wonder if they're doing this from a design perspective or not is the health bars. Because it's one long health bar that's subdivided into hit points, sort of like how League of Legends does it. But in League, you're more concerned with your percentage health remaining than you are your total number. And XCOM is a game of numbers, and it's a game of chess. And I need to know that if I take that hit for 8 damage from the Muton, I have enough HP. And I feel like there's going to be a lot more counting with this style of health bars, because 5 HP is the same. It looks the same shape as 18 HP, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. That might be something that I just get used to, and it's okay, and the UI looks clean, and it's not giant stacks of health bars, and that's fine. But at this moment, I'm a little bit concerned that that's going to make me have to slow down and count things all the time.
See, I think, and this will lead into something that I'm going to talk an awful lot about in this game. I think because of the nature of the combat, your actual total HP is going to be a lot less. You're going to a lot of time. Phase combat that we'll talk more about later on once we get a bit deeper into the video.
So I was thinking about health bars, that either it's a gameplay decision to make, like, their emphasis isn't going to be on that numbers aspect and counting health bars, and just knowing like a general relative health level of your soldiers is what they want you focused on by this UI choice, or they did it for aesthetics and it's a disaster because the numbers are going to be important. I'm hoping it's the former. And that's designed into the way gameplay works, instead of just like an oversight because they wanted it to be pretty.
I honestly think it will, because of the nature of the new style of combat, because of the style of the game, and the way they've changed it. I think the missions are going to be much, much faster, and you're going to be taking more risky, making more risky plays. Like, it's going to be really interesting, because I think a lot of XCOM players at this stage are playing Long War, playing lots of Long War. And they play super duper safe, and I think people who do that, in XCOM2, given what we're obviously going to see, I think. But, HP bars, they have changed. They seem to be, like, pip-based and the same length no matter how many pips you have. Maybe that's just a visual display based on the fact that it's a demo. We don't know, but we'll find out.
The other thing I noticed here is the mouse is snapping to the tiles in the grid, and we don't have a mouse cursor. And I don't know if that's just because they didn't record the mouse cursor when they recorded the demo, or if that's actually, like, baked in.
Not sure.
Oh, there's the cursor. It came back.
Yeah. The other thing that's really interesting about the mouse cursor and the way the mouse moves around is the way it highlights tiles. Now, I don't think, like, we don't see any vertical units. We don't see any flying units. But based on grenade indicators and based on the way that thing snaps to where it's going to be, I think we're going to be able to judge height and location much, much easier with this new UI. Yeah. And I think that's going to be really important for flying-based units, which should, conversely, make the multiplayer much more playable.
Yeah, one of the major UI complaints that I have about the current XCOM game is elevation is super rough. Like whether you're throwing a grenade or flying or whatever, it's the UI it's just not quite there. And if they've been able to solve that for XCOM 2, and it looks like they've given it some consideration, and we'll see that grenade in just a minute. That's going to make this so great.
Yeah, and when we get to the grenade thing, we'll talk about like Z-level gameplay and what we think about why that based on what we see in the video and not watch it, because I think that's impacting on my internets.
Oh yeah, that could be why you're stuttering a little bit on the video feed. So we're paused on the screen now where we're looking at these red tiles on the ground, which gives me great hope. Great hope.
Yeah,
I mean, it's perfect for the concealment mechanic, but they could do so much more with it.
You are so excited about this because, and so am I, right? The biggest issue, and I have this happen all the time, especially with my gameplay style where I'm very, very aggressive. I will say, right, this soldier can move to here and shoot this alien and everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. And then I move to there and I can't shoot that alien.
Yeah.
And so I hope they've really done some serious thinking about the UI where it's like, it tells you where the aliens can see you and where you can see the aliens. And if they relay that information in a better way in XCOM 2, it's going to make the game and make more playable.
Yeah.
Not risky decisions, because they're not risky if you can actually, have the information and make a decision based on that, rather than going, maybe my soldier can shoot this guy, or maybe we can throw a grenade that far. So,
and all I want is a button I can, like, if I hold down shift, it shows this red for all of the units, and I can tell, or like for the unit I've selected, I hold down shift, I can see what he does and doesn't have line of sight on, so that I can make an informed decision about where to stand to shoot at him.
Yeah.
Like the guessing game and trying to like suss out and memorize the line of sight rules and know about leaning out and, you can't lean off that curb and like all that nitpicky stuff. If we could get that out of the way and let me play the game, I want it. I want it so badly.
It'd be so good.
So Show, you brought up a point while we were watching the movement that maybe we could touch on, because the devs did talk about this after the video in a part that we didn't show, but you can definitely catch on YouTube if you're interested in how they phrase it. But they are going to have a waypoint system for sending your soldiers' movement. You can choose what tiles they go through and what path they take. And they also said that by default, your soldiers will try to go around fire and acid and not walk through stupidly. And you can force them to go through it if you need the extra movement to get past it, or if you need to stand in the acid to take your shot, or for whatever reason. So that is something to show you that they've been careful about including a feature.
And the simple thing of being able to choose where you path is huge, because if you can, I don't know why I'm going all roboty, but if you can, especially with the new three-phase gameplay, and I'm going to harp on about this, you guys are going to get sick of me saying three-phase gameplay, but I think
and it allows the players to really set up these cool
is the most important. And and you are going to have to make that decision. Do I run through that acid? Do I run through that fire? Do I run around that Overwatcher or through that Overwatch, because of the clock that you're constantly on in this game? Once you break concealment, it's on. Like, you don't have time. That's what I've sort of gained from the gameplay trailer so far. So
yeah. So I've advanced the video to the next spot that we wanted to talk about, and this, like, okay, it has no impact on gameplay. There is nothing at all happening here that affects strategy or tactics, but it's so wonderful. It's such like it's these little bits of polish that make a game sing. And we're looking at this soldier sees himself on a wanted poster. So they've included, like, your customization on your team is going to propagate through the cinematics and the game world, and like those touches, just, I love it.
And it's a good time to actually point out the cinematic style as well. Now, I hope that this isn't just for the demo. I hope these non-scripted, these cinematic events are non-scripted. Like, you move your soldier up to a hollow board and it flashes up with an image of them. Or, you know, you move close to the objective and you get that pan-out shot that you would have seen when they notice the big statue in the distance. I hope that those moments are not scripted cinematics and they're actually non-scripted cinematics that happen during missions, because it's going to increase your immersion. Like, you're going to feel like your soldiers are stealthily moving through and, oh, we've spotted the objective and check it out. Doesn't it look like me? So you're going to have all of those really immersive moments, which I think is great as a streamer and a player. So
yeah, and there, as a player, I love games that make me solve interesting puzzles, but that also give me that immersion. And so XCOM is a good blend of those two things. Could they have made a game that's just a top-down, square grid, move pieces, calculate numbers, shoot things, and give me all the puzzle aspects without any of the cinema and the drama? Yes. But that immersion piece, you grow attached to that soldier. He's just seen himself on a wanted poster. What's he thinking? You know, we've snuck up and done this beautiful Overwatch maneuver. Like, all those bits that just bring you into that world. That's as important to me as gameplay, because that makes the experience something that I come back for.
Till it finishes, Amy. I don't know how long we're going to talk for. We'll probably waffle on for quite some time, I would imagine. And the other thing I want to sort of touch on as well, and with the cinematic, I'll talk about that a little bit later on when we get to the actual Overwatch part, because I think that's really important. But we can continue on to the next bit here that we wanted to talk about, which is the nod, the hat tip to classic 90s XCOM.
Yeah, so this is as a person who loves his flavor and as a person who loves his stories as much as I love the puzzles and the tactics. This guy's red cape, so he is reminiscent of the 1990s XCOM floater. Thank you, Firaxis. You are wonderful people.
Just a little
just a tip
of the hat.
Just like the Thin Man in that intro cinematic. Just like, hey, did you play the previous game? Because this is for you.
And those little moments, they just make you feel so good about supporting a franchise like XCOM. So, I mean, it's really, really good. Are we at the point in the VOD where he's starting to set up the Overwatch?
We're getting there. That's the next stopping point.
In the intro video.
So he's going to say Dark Collaborator. I think we talked over it. But the name of that Thin Man is Dark Collaborator. So there's a little UI piece that we want to focus in on here that I've paused, and you can see at the bottom of the screen. We've got the heads, yellow for flanked, red for not flanked. But then look at the text underneath Overwatch. Because the description, Overwatch in XCOM2 with -10 just tells you exactly how the mechanic works right there in the description of the text. It's not a hidden multiplier. It's right there.
And I think they're going to be really good about giving you that information, and we'll talk more about that when we go to take the first shot on this.
This is one of my favorite.
On this Overwatch track.
Never gets old.
So just pause before the shot's taken.
Yeah. So they're setting up the Overwatch now.
So we're moving our specialist and our rookie into position. They're still outside of the concealment radius. You can see the red tiles. You do not want to go there, but you still have to be careful.
And they're moving up the Ranger, and we'll pause on the shot so we can look at that UI.
Double Overwatch. We have 2 units in Overwatch, and now our Ranger is moving up into the...
Okay, right here, we're paused on that, the fire weapon UI. So
there's a lot of things to talk about here, all right? You'll notice the UI popped up, and it popped out on both sides. Now, the E3 banner is blocking them, but if you've been checking out the screenshots on IGN, you'll have seen this UI a little bit clearer. So basically, what's happened here is the UI's popped up and it's giving you your damage amounts. Minimum and maximum. No more of this you do see. Like Llama, today, you had, well, last night I should say, you had an example where you moved me up, it was me, and I was supposed to rocket punch an Exalt soldier for 10 damage. That's what was the listed damage. And I moved and I hit him, that same guy, for 15. And there was no way for us to know what the minimum damage was, what the maximum damage was. There was none of that information is actually given to you in Enemy Unknown. It is given to you in in XCOM2, which I think is great. The other thing is the UI popped out left and right. Now, if you've seen the screenshot, on the left-hand side, it shows you all of the aim modifiers right there on the screen while you're ready to take your shot. None of this F1 nonsense. It's there available for you immediately. And on the right-hand side, it shows you all your crit modifiers. So you get all of that information all on the UI right in front of you, which I think is it's just brilliant.
Yeah, it's just cleaner. Like, you're not going to spend that time going, oh, why do I only have 20% to hit this Muton elite? Let me hit F1 and read all the modifiers. They're just on the screen. You don't have to look through another pane. You know, it's clean. It's quick, which seems to be, they want you to move faster. They want you to play more from the gut and from the hip than planning everything out carefully and assessing all of the numbers and doing a bunch of math, and that's going to be a fun play style.
3-phase gameplay. I'm sorry, but seriously, that's what this all breaks down to, is the 3-phase gameplay. And once we actually get into phase 2, I'll explain a little bit about what I mean there.
Okay, let's let them start phase 2 then.
But I do want to talk about the Overwatch trigger. So.
Oh, the other thing that I wanted to mention on the UI here is, do you see on the heads that one of them has little arrows? It's pretty small on the screen, but one of the heads has 2 little marks on it. So you know which thing you're targeting in that list as well as in the real world. Oh, I want that in Long War. When I have a list of 10 heads and I find the right one and then I switch soldiers to plan the rest of the turn and then I come back to that guy and I don't remember which one it was. Like, just that little indicator, just that little bit of help.
Be a pretty cool
just a little tiny thing. Happens.
Yeah. So from your flavor commentator, that blood's a weird color.
It's looking a little meldy, actually.
Yeah. Now watch how cinematic the Overwatch is. Both guys are moving. The one who's getting shot didn't just pause. We did get the slow-mo, but they both run through the Overwatch at the same time. And then we get this little cinematic moment once we trigger the pods.
Now the enemy knows where your squad is. So we're going to send our forward.
Go ahead.
So basically, the thing I want to point out here is just how much more work they've put into the animation quality of the game. So old Overwatch was basically, I freeze, or like basically freeze, and then the other guy acts at full speed and just, you know, well, or close to full speed. There was so much disparity between this unit that was moving and the unit that was shooting, and movement, and the ragdolls were all within it. Was unreal. I'm not actually on YouTube at the moment.
Skype's still not treating you super well.
Yeah, they can't do a lot about it, unfortunately. But in this, you'll see like they track the target as it moves and continue firing bullets. And also, the other thing that's really interesting is they fire at 2 different targets. As the aliens scatter, they fire at 2 different targets. Is that because the targets are closest? Is there going to be smart Overwatch in the game? These are all things that are really exciting about that one moment, because even if it's just the closest target, that allows you to set up perfect Overwatch ambushes where you can hit 3 or 4 targets at once from concealment, potentially.
And the devs talked about they wanted to remove that when you see a pod, that pod gets a free turn to scatter. They wanted you to get the free turn on reveal, and they wanted that reveal to be a powerful moment for XCOM. And improving Overwatch so you don't waste it all on one guy they have to have done it, because it's so detrimental to that moment if they didn't.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So
and then the cinematic is really cool as all the other entities on the map react.
Yeah, and now we're seeing cover destruction. If you'll notice, just the regular shots that missed are destroying way more cover, which is another thing that's going to push players to not just like hunker down and do trench warfare and trade shots, but you're going to be pushed to keep moving every turn, because 50% of your cover is going to be destroyed every time you trade fire, and I think that's going to make for a much more engaging and fast-paced. It's really selling that playstyle that they've been going for.
And the great thing about it is it adds to the whole thematic of the game. So you've got this guerrilla team who is inserting, trying to complete an objective.
And rooftops.
They're out on basically.
So a lot of
and then get out.
Viper in the
And eventually
trailer,
you'll see the
which
get
is
out. Like at the end of the video, you've already seen it. You have an extraction method, which is really cool, and we'll talk about that later. But this 3-phase gameplay of sneak in, be stealthy, take your time, set up the perfect ambush, then complete your objective and get out. Like you've got that change of pace. I think it's excellent.
Yeah,
I think
so
this game is going to be brilliant.
Like setting up the ambush isn't just like the first 3 turns where you don't know where the pot is. That is a very planned out and important part of the level. As important as the firefight. Then you have the firefight. And then just as important as setup and firefight is phase 3, which is get out of there because you're about to get overwhelmed because the Viper just jumped out of the back of a truck and spat nasty goo on the camera and then ran over.
You saw she combined.
And this is disgusting. Right across his cover. She sends that tongue 8 tiles away. Right across this soldier's cover and yanks him over the obstacle.
Yeah, that's the thing that really stuck out to me from this. So we'd had the Viper reveal. We'd been told, you know, she can pull your soldier out of cover. I always assumed it was going to be, you know, maybe 3 or 4 tiles. She couldn't pull them past cover. She'd have to pull
only
them
if she
from
was
a
flanking
location.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, that's not how this works. She just grabs you from halfway across the map and drags you out. Now, it is important to note that a Viper cannot normally move, tongue lash, and bind in a single turn.
Right. She gets 2 moves.
Also,
so if she has to move in range for tongue lash, she can't bind you. But if you stop in range of her, she can pull you over and grab you in 1 turn.
At least that's what we've sort of decided appears to be the way things work. On top of that, she's not going to instant kill your soldiers by binding them. It's not an instant kill maneuver unless your soldier has low health.
Yeah, I imagine it to be a little more like a Seeker, where they grab you and lock you up for a few turns. But she also has the benefit of pulling you out of cover to lock you up, where then your soldier's in a bit of trouble when they have the strangled debuff and they're standing there.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how that interacts with the other AI on the map. Like, can you be shot while you're bound? Because if so, that is even more terrifying because you have to free that soldier basically immediately. Even the simple ability to move up and lash, like, will Vipers be the first units to act? And if so, are they going to move up, lash you out of cover, and then get you shot?
Yeah, and I'm excited that they're terrifying. Because part of, like, making the puzzle part of the game super compelling is if there is an enemy that is just, it's completely horrifying if they get to use their abilities, that puts so much pressure on good tactical decisions. And do I run forward toward that Viper to eliminate her, or do I make sure that everybody's out of range so nobody gets grabbed out of cover? And I have to play those 2 options against each other, and they're such polar opposites, and each of them involves the whole team moving, and that's just good, like, forcing me to make difficult decisions is exactly what I want. And I'm glad that she's kind of overpowered because the enemy needs overpowered units because AI is never going to be... Video game AI in this generation is not going to be smart enough to win if everything's even. And if AI is smart enough to win when everything's even, you don't feel super powerful for taking out an overpowered enemy. And so I think it shouldn't be. I think they should be overpowered, and you should feel like a genius when you outsmart them and outmaneuver them with less powerful troops.
And there's 2 other things I want to touch on here as well now that we've seen the Viper. Is first of all, Firaxis has taken this excellent design decision to say, you know what? In XCOM Enemy Unknown, your soldiers felt like Muppets. Reach they totally... And like a sectoid versus, a single sectoid could kill your soldiers really, really easily. Even outside of Long War, if you were playing on high difficulty levels, right? Your soldiers just were not good enough. Now, that's still happening in XCOM 2, but you have these Advent soldiers. Now, Advent soldiers are basically grunts. They give you this whole grunt and mini-boss mechanic, which basically means, okay, Advent... there's different difficulty levels of them. There's the mechs, there's the commander or the leaders, the sergeants, whatever they're called. I can't remember now. And there will no doubt be more variants of them as well. And, each of them will come with their own challenges, but they are just the foot soldiers. Then you have these aliens who are, genetically enhanced, built for combat, built for their role, and they are exceptional at it. And so you've got these terrifying vipers I reanimate the dead and mind control your soldiers right from the start of the game. You've got these berserkers who take up 4 tiles on the map and punch you like a football. It's every alien feels more impactful.
That bit of you're shown that your soldiers are awesome because you fight Advent and you destroy them because you're great.
Yeah.
And then you're shown that the aliens are even more awesome because they come out and do the same thing to you that you just did to Advent. Oh, it's great. So Skype stuttered you a little bit when you were talking about Reanimate and Mind Control. We heard Reanimate, we heard Mind Control, but we missed the word sectoid. The new, big pink pectoids, they out of the box, they can take dead things on the battlefield and turn them against you, whether it's your soldier or not, which is just terrifying.
The sectoid, the new sectoid, we haven't seen him, but we've read about him. We've seen the Viper, and we've seen this new Berserker. And all of them are, I have no problems with saying a little bit of wee came out when that Berserker showed up. I was terrified. I was like, how does one deal with that? Rub salt on it? I think, Llama, that was your suggestion, right?
Well, he looks like his skin's missing, and it's all you can see just muscle and tendon, and he's just built to punch you in the face. But I think they're susceptible to salt because skin missing.
Salt grenades confirmed a thing. That's what we've taken away from that encounter.
Yep. So there is just a 10-second blip. Not even 10 seconds. There's a 1-second blip on the screen that I want to draw attention to here. As our ranger is setting up this attack, look at the UI for just a second. You've got the tile she's going to, but you also have this white target on the Viper. And I wonder if move and melee have to be decided at the moment you move. If that's one attack is move and melee. If that maybe it only takes one action, or maybe you have to commit to the melee attack because charging in there is how the melee attack gets its power. But just that little moment on the UI raises a lot of good questions for me.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if I really like the idea of it taking a move and the melee attack is effectively an attack, so it ends your turn. Mm-hmm. So even if it is your first move, I believe that even if it's your first move, I believe it'll end your turn. If you get to move twice and do it, it'll still end your turn, unless you've got certain perks that you get later on in the game, apparently.
Right, but if you have to commit to the attack, so one thing that I do a lot is I'll move a bunch of soldiers into position, and then I'll decide what to do with them based on how much damage is dealt and what hits miss and what hits hit. And it looks like you're committing to that melee attack when you go in, and your soldier's standing there, and that's the end of the story.
Which makes it emphasizes it's a risky gameplay tactic. You have to decide, right, well, okay, that Viper has just grabbed my soldier. If I don't deal with it right now, my soldier is going to die next turn. I can't see what's around that corner, so what am I going to do? Well, I can't shoot him. I've only got rookies left. I can't kill him this turn unless I risk my ranger. And you've got to make that hard decision.
And what am I going to see over there when I get there? And is it worth saying? And having to commit to that decision is different and interesting. So we're on the grenade UI here. There are a couple of just wonderful things. If you're familiar with using smoke grenades in Enemy Within and Long War, you know that there are tiles that are covered by the sphere but don't actually have smoke in them. And if you look at the ground here, you can tell exactly which tiles those are. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I can finally 100% know who's going to be in my smoke grenade.
And on top of that, it's also going to work for things like rockets, I would imagine. So any AoE effect, from what we've seen so far, is going to place tiles on the ground so you can see exactly what it affects. Now, that is a huge difference. No more, I'm covering the toe of that sector pod with this chem grenade. Will it hit? I don't know. Maybe. everything will be much more clearer. And I think that's like one of the biggest things to take away from this gameplay video is just the UI is visually clearer. You can make decisions by looking at the main screen. You don't have to guess. You don't have to calculate. Everything is available for you there and then, which means faster gameplay and
better puzzle gameplay. If you're playing a game that is set up to be chess-like and tiles and puzzles, it should give you all of the information you need to make the best decision. There shouldn't ever be a moment where you're wondering if maybe this runs at Overwatch, maybe it doesn't. Maybe I get to see him from here, maybe I don't. Maybe this is a flank, maybe that should never happen. You should always know the results in a game of this style, in my opinion.
If a game has rules, the rules should be obeyed. Yeah. And you should be able to have the information available to make a decision based on those rules.
Especially in a turn-based game, where the design is that you have enough time. Like, the reason you make a game turn-based and not real-time is so that you can have time to think through your choices.
Yep. There is one other thing I want to touch on with the grenade UI, and that is the Z-level. So Z-level is the biggest culprit, the biggest reason for rage and salt in XCOM Enemy Within. Every time you have that floater that can shoot you, but you can't shoot him because of line of sight bugs. Every time you in the fire, every time you throw a smoke grenade that looks like it's going to cover something and it doesn't cover something. A lot of that is Z-level mechanics, right? Even simple things like flanking sometimes is screwed up by Z-level. Like, I know there's a curb on a particular map that stops you from leaning out and taking a flank shot. That Z-level stuff is super, super frustrating. Now, if you look at the grenade UI on this, and it's hard to see when it's paused, but if you watch the grenade move, you can see the Z-levels clearly marked, and they move fluidly no matter where the grenade is placed.
Now, what that indicates
to me, so now what that indicates to me is that the Z-levels are much better implemented. And that's really important because of the way cover destruction is going to work, with floors and ceilings being destroyable now as well. They must have done a lot of work on getting the Z-level right. And when you add Z-level calculations into triple, I think it is, the amount of information that needs to be calculated for positioning, because you're adding like an entire extra dimension. And so that was never doable with consoles. For these like precise calculations, PC only, maybe Z-level works perfectly. From what we can see, it looks like it's going to work. Obviously, until we've seen like flying units and stuff, we won't be able to know for sure. But I'm really excited. I think it will.
Yeah.
That's one of my. Please fix Z-level.
Yeah, that is super exciting. Now, as we're going through the details and looking at these rings on the grenade, so you can see the Z-level range, and we also need to listen to a few words that the developer says in this next segment as I unpause the video. It's just like 6 seconds.
Here, 3 advent by a car. That's like a zebra sunbathing when a lion is ready to...
Not the zebra sunbathing bit, but this next.
Take them all out at once. We have a lot of new grenades as well. Acid bombs, fire bombs that have more spreading fire that the player will be able to build and take advantage of.
Acid bombs and fire bombs that have spreading fire for the player to take advantage of. So he's talking about new grenade types. That's just going to be fun.
And the spreading fire mechanic is really interesting, because in Enemy Within, it's a penalty. Almost always. Because of the nature of cover destruction, the nature of the trench warfare and the careful playing, and the fact that you have no access to control where fire happens, really. It just sort of happens and sometimes takes out your cover, sometimes it doesn't. The fact that fire is probably better implemented because there are fire bombs means that you can now do things like set up zones of denial where there is a big patch of fire and organic units can't run through it. You can put buildings on fire, which will, eventually destroy them and take out structural elements and bring the building down, destroy it, because buildings are completely...
Yeah, the buildings are completely destructible. The other thing, it looks like they wanted to put that in Enemy Within. The Long War team has uncovered a pyrokinesis skill that was supposed to be given to soldiers. I think originally it wasn't a psi skill like it is in Long War. It was just you make some fire with your gun. They wanted zone control with fire to be a thing, but I think they just couldn't get it working super well, and so they ended up scrapping it, is my interpretation of why it's in the game code, but not in the game that we play. But if they've been able to solve whatever problems prevented them from using fire, I'm really excited about fire in XCOM 2. Really excited.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, what was our next? Oh,
That
so
is
listen
your Advent
again
unit
to the
on
words.
turret. It's an immobile sentry gun that goes on Overwatch once you trigger its reveal.
He says the sentry turret goes on Overwatch once you trigger its reveal. Which our first thought about concealment was concealment is all or nothing. It's a phase of the combat. Is it possible that units have separate reveals and that you can have concealment with different pods and units on the map? Or maybe that was just a word that he chose and I need to stop reading that much into it because he was just talking.
I think, my opinion on that is, I think stationary units, things like mechanized gun turrets and other like stationary units, like the gun turret's the most obvious one. So the gun turret one, I imagine that unless you're in its zone of sort of Overwatch, unless you're in its area of effect, it won't be active. So it can only be activated once it knows there's a threat in its immediate vicinity, whereas mobile soldiers will be able to obviously move to threatening the city, so X in this example. So I think maybe like the stationary gun emplacements and things, you can choose to fight away from them. They'll never go on Overwatch because you haven't revealed them, and then you can try and dash past them, and that will reveal the Overwatch. Maybe something to that effect, but...
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So now our soldier runs up to the map objective, and
the turret is firing at her.
the fact that objectives are procedural, super cool.
And the fact that there are objectives. So this is something that not a lot of people have actually brought up, but one of the biggest reasons that XCOM lacked replayability, besides procedural maps, which we're getting, is every mission, besides like one a month, maybe, was... because sometimes you just got a kill mission for them as well. But basically, every mission, besides one a month, was go here, kill this.
Yep.
Now, in XCOM, and they talk about this a little bit after the video as well, I think, there are different types, and they are procedurally generated for every mission. So when you go on a mission, you might have to destroy a building. You might have to kill a VIP. You might have to hack an objective. You might have to steal something. There are all of these different things that you have to do on top of eliminating patrols and killing aliens and taking loots and all of that stuff. So every mission you go into, you're going to be thinking a different way. It's not going to be, okay, this squad is perfect for every mission. Like at the moment, on Long War, for instance, I take one of every soldier type, one of every class, I go into a mission, I kill everything. That squad does that mission, and the next mission, and the next mission, and the next... because that squad is perfectly balanced to do every single mission, right? When you've got objectives, like if you have to hack something, maybe you want to bring 2 specialists. Give you a backup source of ranged hacking. If you need to eliminate a VIP, maybe an extra ranger would be really good. And because of the 5 see like this rotationary 5 main soldiers, your core, and then 1 utility slot. That'll be good at various different mission types. You know, you've got to blow up a building, bring a grenadier. Maybe he has an ability to do it from range or something like that. It'll provide more tactical flexibility, which is going to be fun. So,
yeah. Additionally, maybe we should rename the second phase of our 3-phase paradigm to objective instead of combat. Because a lot of the time, maybe you're avoiding combat because you're outclassed and there are big scary aliens. And that's okay, and probably even a good thing.
And I think on most missions, killing everything isn't going to be the requirement. Like, to successfully complete a mission in Enemy Unknown, you have to kill everything. On just about every single mission. There's like 3 or 4 that you don't. You have to kill everything other than escort missions and XCOM 2, it looks like it's more, okay, we want to strike a blow against the aliens, let's take out their supply depot. Go blow up that building. As soon as you've done that blowing up of the building, killing extra aliens is going to be more XP, it's going to be more loot off their corpses, because that's something you do now, you loot things off corpses. But you can extract as soon as you are either too scared or you are satisfied with what you've achieved. Yeah, that's a big change to the way the game's played. I don't think it's going to be... I think you're right. I think, Llama, we need to change the three-phase combat to, concealment... Well, yeah, concealment, then objective, and then extraction. They're the 3 points.
And combat's sort of like how you survive all 3 phases, but it's not... It seems to not ever be the primary objective, which is... I think it's interesting and really a cool decision. Also, as your flavor commentator, the shape of the bomb makes me happy. I just smiled that XCOM's like, hey, we're making a little satchel charge. Let's just make it shaped like our logo because, whatever.
The objective.
And that's a really powerful, explosive charge to take out the base of that entire statue.
Yeah, there's not going to be anything left. No one's ever going to see that it's that shape except for the guy who attaches it and then grins with glee because we're going to blow a thing up.
Careful.
And I'm sure that rookie did grin. It's like, oh, I get to place the bomb.
So the Advent jump right out of that plane, and they don't seem to care about how far they just fell. I think they're gene modded. I think that's why their blood is yellow.
Yeah, it looks very meldy to me. I am getting the feeling that the... So this is completely, just my opinion. I think the Advent are basically humans that have gone in for gene mod therapy, because that's a huge, overarching and controlled by some ultimate alien.
Yeah.
The new ethereal, if you will.
Right, they've, implanted some kind of control device, and the Advent are just, mindless shock troopers now.
Yeah, they're just ants.
So if you... the video's super quiet because I just picked a quiet version on YouTube, and I can't get the sound up any louder. But listen super carefully as these Advent drop in. Listen super carefully.
And in this case, 3 new Advent troops have been called in. So you have to get in, strike fast, and get out of dodge.
These Advent are speaking alien. They are clearly not talking in a human language.
Which, further...
Just questions about storyline, questions about, just such good little morsels to chew on for a long time and speculate about.
And there can be all the speculation in the world. I think one of the things I really like what XCOM 2 has done is they've given us a much better narrative. XCOM Enemy Unknown, XCOM Enemy Within, the narrative, the story, the situation, if you will, was passable at best, but completely unbelievable. You have the entire world backing you, but you don't have a single artillery piece or a single support bomber, or you don't get things made for you for free. You don't have access to the world's best scientists and engineers, all of them everywhere, all of the time. You don't have all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just this complete lack of suspension of disbelief, and that's not a bad thing. That was a design decision to make the game play the way they wanted to play, and they always focus mostly on mechanics. That's something Firaxis has always been good about. They always, they want the game to be mechanically good because they want the players even or continue to. They've implemented a much more robust story, and I think actually experiencing that story is going to be really fun.
Yeah.
And also because of the way the procedurally generated maps, procedurally generated objectives, every playthrough is going to be just different enough to actually warrant playing through multiple times, I think. Not just for the mechanics, but for the stories and the feel of your soldiers, and I think it's just going to be, it's going to have a lot more replayability, basically.
Yeah. And making the story match up to the mechanics is a design thing that's super challenging, but when you get it right, the immersion you can get in a game, just love it. So we've just seen the objective fall down on the Advent, and if you can do environmental damage to units in XCOM 2, that's going to be so much fun.
The first thing I do when I have a grenadier in Bates add to is up. Or into a building or onto a roof, maybe, and take out the floor beneath them. Like, I want to experiment with falling damage, crushing damage, leaning over and toppling on top of you damage. Like, that opens up so many really cool gameplay moment opportunities that if it's implemented well.
I want to bomb like a line charge that I can set along the base of a wall and topple the wall on a guy on the other side. Like, I want that to be a mechanic that I'm using on purpose very predictably with advanced tech. I want environmental damage to be a thing.
Which is gloriously
absolutely
on many Advent troops.
So we're going to see one of the really exciting things right here
earlier, one of
as our specialist goes up.
You may have noticed he's moving around with his little pet gremlin.
The pet gremlin, number one. Adorable.
In this case,
adorable.
We're going to reveal hacking.
Skype chose a perfect moment to stutter you while you beep booped. You sounded just like a robot.
Really? Look, I'm going to be a specialist in every XCOM streamer that I watch because of Little Beep Boop. I don't care about anything else. Little Beep Boop is the best thing in the world. I think both mechanically and aesthetically. The gremlin is so gorgeous, and it seems to be really strong.
Yeah, and this, like, the tech score on your lieutenant, and then, you know, if your tech score beats the turret, you improve the turret, and it's better for you than it was for them. Like, that's just fun.
You actually bring up a really interesting point here, and something that I have wanted to touch on, which we'll need to see multiple soldiers for. But on this mission, you've got 2 lieutenants, which are basically corporals, the 3rd rank, okay? Because XCOM used commissioned officers. It has a lot of level soldier, and then you've got some rookies. Now, if you look at the health bars, this might be anecdotal. They might have chosen the health values purely because reasons. It might not actually represent actual gameplay. But if you have a look, like, it seems that your soldiers gain a lot of hit points. And I don't know if that's, like, if they have advanced gear, or if you just naturally gain a lot of hit points and therefore become a lot stronger and a lot more capable individually. Like, it'll be interesting to see how the soldier progression works, because there seems to be a significant difference in XCOM Enemy Unknown, because obviously we're going to be doing a lot of comparisons. So I'm just going to say in XCOM, not Enemy Unknown, in XCOM, the other game, your soldiers don't get significantly strong with every level unless they pick up, like, a really killer perk, like in the zone on a scout, for instance. In this, it seems like they might gain stuff a lot quicker. Might be purely anecdotal, but it may be that your soldiers start really weak, like they're green rookies recruited, you know, fresh out of a freedom fighter organization, no training, no experience with aliens, and then they just, like, they learn fast. Rigorous training. I think that's the way it's going to go.
And it's exciting to speculate about. One UI change, another one that I absolutely love, as we're looking at this turret cannon, look at the way its ammo is listed beneath the weapon icon. It's not just over the weapon and you have to guess if you have 2 or 3 shots left. You have a pip for every round in that magazine, and hallelujah, no more guessing. The UI changes that are no more guessing, oh, give me all of them. I didn't realize how much guessing I was doing in Enemy Within until I saw how much guessing I don't have to do in this trailer.
Optimized.
And that's, like, a huge thing. The elimination, like, providing of information and eliminating guessing. Those 2 elements brought into this game, like, they're huge.
Yeah.
I was the same. Like, when I walked in, before XCOM 2 was launched, I said, the 2 things I want fixed: line of sight, fix it. I don't want line of sight bugs. Please eliminate line of sight bugs, and fix Z level. They're the 2 things I wanted. If they fix those 2 things and release XCOM Enemy Within revisioned, exactly the same game, the exact same everything, the same art assets even, I would rebuy the game just to have the experience with no Z-level and no line of sight issues.
Yep. So
The fact that they've,
the dev says in there, tip of the robotic enemies iceberg. So chat's been speculating about hacking sectopods and hacking mechs, and I think that might all be in there. Like, probably with some difficulty gating so that you can't just like if they bring a mech, it's a liability. I mean, probably those more advanced units will be much more difficult to hack than the turret. But I think the way the dev's talking, I think that you'll be able to hack pretty much anything robotic, which is super fun.
Yeah, like hacking mechs and hacking flying alien drone things, and you can do it from range as well. Like, if there's a capture mechanic in the game again, which there may well be because of the corpse dragging system, which we'll talk about in a second, but if there is a capture mechanic, the ability to like stun aliens from range will be super useful. No more running your arc thrower up and being like, oh, well, I failed the capture, time to kill this alien. Like, actually
Close range.
Yeah.
Speaking of Central Officer Bradford, if you had any question whether Central is still Bradford, listen to his next voice line.
All right, looks like we may be in the clear.
What the hell is that? Says Bradford, in classic Bradford style. And here's our skinless berserker.
I'm so glad I can't see the video feed right now.
He's got the predator mouth with the side, like the unhingeable jaw, and he's so scary. Oh my gosh, I want him to kill me over and over and over until I learn how to beat him. That's what I want. Oh, what's he gonna have? What's he gonna have that is more overpowered than Bull Rush to make me so scared of him?
Okay, so this is just a thought based on the actions taken in the trailer, and it's like obviously a doctored trailer, so I don't know if this is the case. I have a suspicion that Bull Rush will you'll destroy things and maybe cover because you bet Bull Rush to the target. Your full impact is dealt to the target, which is going to result in the
evolved berserker. You may remember the berserker.
The ouchies.
The ouchies.
Where basically one of our soldiers gets flung around like a paper bag and smushed against the truck. Splat.
And the mechs here do not need to take cover. Heavily armored, heavy firepower.
Did our unit just panic there? I didn't notice this. I've watched this video 5, 6, 7, 8 times. There's a little red UI flag that pops up when the mech destroys the cover here.
I think that was damage from the mech's like collateral damage style ability.
Oh, okay.
I think like that's why I said maybe the berserker's charge does less damage if it's going through cover, because it looked like the mech deliberately took the cover.
Yeah. So my guess is maybe they included ragdoll cinematics, because pounding that guy against that truck was beautiful. As much as it's sad that our ranger's now on the ground with the knee bent in a very awkward position. What a beautiful cinematic. And if they've put like good ragdolls like that and good berserker punching into in-game cinematics, and that's not just doctored for this trailer, one more flavor bit that I'm going to get a kick out of.
And talking from a mechanical standpoint, if that is gameplay representative, okay, the soldier getting bashed, ragdolling against the truck quite, like, convincingly, that means two things that are very exciting. One, collision meshes are accurate.
So you're not going to stand inside the wall and hover over the ground to throw your grenade?
Yep. And on top of that, if collision meshes are kind of can be fixed, a collision mesh is represented by exactly how the terrain looks, and ragdolling is a thing. It's like you're getting thrown into terrain and wrapped around poles and against cars and things like that. Then line of sight is fixed. Just food for thought, but
yeah.
If that's, like, not only is the cinematic really cool, but if it's representative of the gameplay, then we're looking at a game that's had line of sight fixed.
Deathwatch raises an excellent point in the chat about what if critical wounds do things other than just will? Like, look at this soldier's leg. Maybe we lose a point of movement when that soldier comes back on because of this critical wound. Or maybe we do like a robotic replacement like Deathwatch suggested. That would be some fun flavor. I mean, that's entirely me wishing for things.
Yeah. And, like, maybe the whole eye patch thing is representative of taken wounds. Maybe your soldiers develop scars over time. Like, they've said that they want the soldiers to feel much more, I guess is the word. Like, they want you to become more attached, like, more customization options, more in-depth character creation. Maybe all of that sort of stuff is things that can actually happen to your soldier. A lot of games have done it, you know, get slashed, get a scar. It probably would be fairly easy to implement in XCOM.
Infestor Gadget, I don't know how much AP the Zerker has, because he has this style of HP bar that is hard to count. I can't just count rows and multiply by 5. It looks like about 24, maybe, somewhere in there. It's going to make it hard to, like, take them out very predictably without stopping and counting the screen a lot. So hopefully that's a thing that either doesn't matter or gets polished out before the game's released.
Okay, so another new feature.
So now we're going to see the last... They don't spend a bunch of time on this final phase of gameplay, but we're going to see the last 2 mechanics.
Soldiers from the
one is right here. We're picking up a dead soldier. If you don't pull that dead soldier out, you lose their gear, which speaks to a robust strategic side of the game that we haven't seen yet, which is exciting for me, because the XCOM has to have that 2-phase gameplay to be XCOM.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that your gear is now heavily customizable. So I don't think in the character loadout screens, I don't think you're going to have this whole like sort of esoteric main weapon, secondary weapon, armor, two small item slots. I don't think we're going to see that anymore. I think we're probably going to see more along the lines of weight limits, and the only real restriction is, you know, you can only put these particular attachments on these particular weapons. We're going to see laser sight scopes, different types of magazines. We're going to see different types of bullets. We're going to see barrel modifications, possibly all sorts of different stuff that directly modifies your soldier and makes them and that you can now loot the corpses of fallen enemies to get items to customize your soldiers.
So didn't we see, in one of the IGN articles, didn't we see a screenshot with, like, one of the rifles with, like, a scope duct taped on?
Yeah.
Because that, yeah, I mean, if the loadout, like, okay, maybe you have a few hard points you can attach grenades to, but you can attach other things there too, or you could take 2 or 3 items if you're carrying them in different places. Would be a fun depth to add to the strategic layer. So carrying corpses, hopefully that is both friendly and enemies, so you can steal bodies and do research or take their gear. And then the last bit of gameplay mechanic we're going to see right here,
no more of
which is this red zone. Okay, we can't set the evac zone across obstacles, but we can scroll it around and set it anywhere on the map that's not blocked, and set our own evac point, which is just incredibly exciting.
Well, it means that it adds even further depth to your setup. So you've got to now not only pay attention to where the enemies are, where your objective is, but also where you plan to go to get out of the map. And even like the best laid plan there, you can pull off a perfect ambush, you can pull off, you know, an amazing firefight and a quick objective take, but if then aliens reinforce from the direction that you're intending to evac in, and you can't find another suitable evac point, all of a sudden you find yourself in a bogged down firefight where you're trying to reposition to get yourself out. You're dragging along your wounded soldiers, and like the feel of that is just going to be amazing, because you're always going to have that what if, what am I going to do in this situation? You've got to plan ahead. And that wraps up the 3-phase gameplay as well. So you can see and then the reinforcements showed up and they went, oh, no, we can't deal with this Zerker. There's only one of us left now because the other one got battered against a car.
Yeah.
But there's only one of us left now. It is time to leave. So they went evac zone and left.
Yeah, and choosing when to place your evac zone and where to place your evac zone is hopefully as meaningful a choice and as difficult a choice and as strategic and tactical a choice as the setup phase and the objective phase. And I think that that's going to add a dimension to decision making that'll be really interesting. Trolf de Madre, we haven't seen any base building yet in the tidbits that they've released, but there is a lot of evidence that there's a good strategic layer. It wouldn't be an XCOM game without one. And the fact that you're taking gear back to base by picking up dead or wounded comrades is, like, it definitely suggests that tracking inventory and creating new items and that sort of thing is definitely part of the game. I wouldn't worry about it too much. And who else had a question? Somebody wanted to go back and look at the Ranger to see if we could pick them up. I don't think there's an indication in the UI that we can lift the Ranger, but I think we've read in other articles that you can take your dead out to save their gear. And specifically that if you don't, in Enemy Within, when you win the mission, there's a whole hidden phase that you don't see where the cleanup team comes and dismantles the UFO and carries it all back to base and cleans up the alien corpses and picks up your dead and wounded and your gear. XCOM2 is more guerrilla warfare, and once you leave that combat zone, you're not in control of it. And so you don't get gear that was left on dead soldiers.
Yeah, you actually have to... Like, every soldier that falls in combat is no longer just a dead soldier. It is the loss of your gear unless you carry them out. Even if you successfully complete the mission, you have to plan...
So she can bind. She can also do this nifty trick.
And, like, if you're not playing Long War, or you're not playing with the second wave option that destroys your gear, you can literally complete a mission with 1 out of your 6 soldiers or whatever. And as long as you successfully finish the mission, you get everything. Because you've killed all the aliens. In XCOM 2, that's no longer your objective. There's always going to be aliens in these cities. You can't just stroll in there with the cleanup crew and recover all the corpses and all of the gear and all of the resources. You have to do that on the fly. Yeah. Which really adds to that guerrilla style of gameplay as well, which is cool.
All right, so I've scrolled back to see if there is a UI element for picking up the corpse when we have the downed soldier that got killed by the Viper. And I don't know the icons well enough. Maybe that green one looks like lifting something up. I'm not sure what that is. Could be, but I don't know if we're going to see
resources,
what that UI element looks like.
New methods into their own hands, such as
for lifting out your dead.
Really awesome mission.
Yeah. So, I mean, that sort of wraps up our recovery or our sort of breakdown of the actual gameplay footage that we've got access to right now. Llama, what's your current sort of overarching opinion based on what you've seen? What are you most excited for in XCOM 2 right now?
Well, I'm excited for new puzzles to solve. I think possibly the most exciting thing for me is procedural maps, procedural objectives, and secondary objectives, so that my puzzles stay fresh for a really, really long time, and I can get a ton of gameplay out of this game. Number 2 on my list of things I'm hyped about for XCOM 2 is all the guesswork they've taken out of the interface. Like, just by redesigning and making the interface better, I don't have to guess anymore. Those 2 things, I'm super excited. What about you?
Yeah. I'm basically in the same boat. I think the puzzles thing is definitely top of my list. The gameplay, like, I'm most of the way, well, probably well over halfway now, through a full Long War campaign. And even with Long War, with the scaling of the aliens and stuff, it is starting to get a little bit stale. Like, going on missions, I'm doing them the exact same way. I've been on like 6 base assaults now. Every one of them has gone basically the exact same way. And I still enjoy playing it. I still enjoy solving the little puzzles, but I'm looking forward to solving the bigger puzzles, the overarching questions of how do I achieve my objective rather than how do I kill this one pod. Because that's all XCOM Enemy Unknown. Sort of, when you really break it down, that's what XCOM Enemy Unknown's puzzle is. How do I kill this pod without spotting the next pod of aliens? And that's not going to be a luxury now. There is another thing that I wanted to bring up, which we didn't touch on, and it doesn't be on the map at all.
Okay, we missed a little bit due to Skype.
Oh, Fog of War, sorry.
Fog of War.
It doesn't seem to be any kind of Fog of War on the map. Now, that might just be because it's a gameplay trailer, but if it's not, if it is in fact no Fog of War, that means a couple of things. First of all, you're always going to know where all of the aliens are. Not necessarily the patrol routes, but you're going to know where they are. Which is, yeah, that's representative. I'm sure you've got, like, microsatellites or something. This is 20 years in the future. You've probably got microsatellites, tiny flying drones that are providing camera images.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
you've got the scouts.
If they want to take some information away, they shouldn't take it away based on range. Like, walk outside your house. You can see 6 miles. They should take it away based on obscurement and line of sight. And that should be really clear. Maybe you make a dark patch that's out of line of sight so you know there could be enemies back there and your soldiers can't see that. But doing it based just on like a sphere of dark clouds of goo is a concession to making enemy within work and making the puzzle work. But it's not super realistic. And I'd like to see it based on line of sight rather than fog.
And I think it will. Because of some comments made by the developers, specifically that the aliens on the rest of the map will react to you being no longer concealed. I have a feeling that once concealment is broken, everything on the map is going to be reacting, and that doesn't necessarily mean every pod is going to immediately enter combat and start trying to chase and kill you, but it might be, okay, the pods that can see you, they're all going to activate. And the pods that can't see you are going to investigate, you know, what's all of that gunfire coming down the alley over there? Or
yeah. And being able to know where all those pods are because your line of sight is much further than your reveal radius.
Yeah.
Is a huge thing. And it lets you plan that concealment phase, and it makes that concealment phase so much richer because maybe you do go hide behind a building so that 2 of the pods will have a harder time pinpointing your location, and you can just deal with 1. And maybe that makes that concealment phase last 2 or 3 turns while you do your positioning well before the objective phase.
And that's another question that's an interesting one to ask is, do you have a limited amount of time in concealment? Are you eventually automatically detected?
Oh.
Like, are you given a time limit during the concealment?
The only thing we know for sure is that Garth DeAngelis said that there is a chance that those enemies you see are going to patrol around and that concealment reveal radius is going to change, and you have to be careful of that. And that seems like the limiting factor, which is a lot more fluid and immersive and believable limiting factor than a number ticking down in the corner of the screen, and I like it a lot if that's the way it works.
Yeah, I agree. I hope there is no like hard clock counter to say this is how long you have to set up your ambush. Perhaps on certain missions, like maybe there are time sensitive missions.
Yeah.
And having a smattering of those thrown in is great because that once again forces you to evolve your gameplay, to change the way you play the game. And every time you are forced to change the way you think, you have more fun playing the game.
Exactly.
A fantastic example today, I picked up on something that just made me so happy when I realized that I could, as my mech in your playthrough, run up into the enemy smoke and basically be unhittable and punch a thing.
Yeah.
And that was not something I would ever have normally considered. I'm a very aggressive player, but I was with you. There were a lot of and terrifying. But I saw the smoke. I was like, oh, I could use that to my advantage. And a light bulb went off, and I got to punch a thing.
And those moments are so great. And if they've done their work, their job is to set up those moments for you and make a game where those things can happen sort of naturally and sort of unplanned. There's a word that's not coming to mind, but at any rate, those sort of moments, that emergent moments of gameplay are that weren't designed but that exist because of all the depth that was designed. Those are great. I think Enemy Within added the meld canisters as a timer that they could put on every mission, so people didn't do one tile Overwatch, one tile Overwatch, one tile Overwatch, and it was a decent way to fix the system they had implemented, But I think timers as a crutch is not a good plan if you have a chance to implement a new system. And I think that they've done a good job of giving you some incentive to move quickly with between concealment and objectives and setting your own extraction point, and not like enemies more powerful than you, so you're not expected to kill them all. They've done a good job of incorporating some elements that will inspire you to move faster without literally just putting a number on the screen.
Yeah, I actually absolutely agree with that. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is, how do you think this is going to change? Like, how do you think this is going to be received by your average XCOM player? Because right now, XCOM, for most people, is a very, very slow defensive game.
Well, I think that's true for the people that we watch play, because they're playing on a really high level and extreme difficulty and trying to win a challenging game set on a difficulty level that you're not meant to play at. I think for your average player of XCOM, they run forward and shoot aliens because that's how it's fun to play. And I think XCOM 2 is going to cater to that crowd super well. And your extreme difficulty players, they're going to adapt because that's how they develop that playstyle anyway.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I'm really looking forward to, I mean, obviously I'm excited. Anybody who watches me and Llama know we have very different playstyles.
I overwatched 35 times standing behind food containers in my base assault.
Was it 35 times on that base
My
assault?
counter at the end of the base assault was 39 Alt-O's.
Wow. So Llama did a base assault today. It took you 3.5 hours, 3 hours?
3 hours and 10 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, and I think I did a base assault at the start of this stream in about an hour. Like, we have very different playstyles. I'm hyper aggressive.
Yeah.
I put on play with really fog. This game, it just resonates with me. The guerrilla style of warfare.
And I'm excited to feel like I'm supposed to play aggressively. Because right now I feel like I'm supposed to play defensively. That works well. It's how I'm successful at the game. And I'm excited for this game to kick me out of that paradigm. I'm really, really happy about it. I want to respond to Mountain Gaming in the chat. Because he's talking about like how stealthy is that concealment phase going to be. And if you watch the whole video and you watch their breakdown afterward, the developer specifically says that they don't want it to be a stealth game. That was not their design. They have a stealth phase, but it still needs to feel like XCOM. It still needs to feel like combat. So the developers have answered that question, and I think that's a good choice, because making XCOM the stealth game is not XCOM for me.
Yeah, exactly right. Like, it's still supposed to be a combat-focused game. It's still supposed to be soldiers fighting a war. But it's just you're fighting a guerrilla war, which means you need to strike fast, you need to strike hard, you strike from the shadows, return to the shadows. That's what you do. But you strike, you don't sneak. And that's... I think they've done a great job of capturing that with the 3-phase gameplay. I think that there's I don't think there'll be any stealth elements out. Like, as soon as you engage a pod, no matter how you do it, even if it's like an individual alien that you kill with a ranger outside of everybody else's line of sight, I'm almost positive that's going to break concealment.
Yep. Because concealment, like, look at the UI for concealment. It was that fuzzy edge around the whole screen. Once it's over, it's over. It's over for everybody, and you're done. So I think the way... I'm pretty much tapped out on what we know for sure about the game. I think we've mentioned everything that we saw in that trailer.
Yeah, I think we've really broke down. Yeah.
So the way I'd like to wrap up is if chat has any questions about our take and our opinion that haven't been answered, that you feel like you want to hear a little bit more about, we can take some questions for a couple of minutes, and then we'll just be excited and hype and be great. And then, are you returning to your playthrough when we're done here?
Yeah. So once we finished here, I'm going to be going back to my XCOM Long War playthrough. So don't go anywhere. The stream will go down for a little while after we're finished, but then I'll be straight back into XCOM. So if you want to see some more gameplay, that'll be happening next. But so if you've got any questions for us, whether it's about stuff that we know, stuff that we've seen, or whether you just want our opinions, if you just want to pose interesting scenarios to us, by all means, chat, throw them at us, and we'll do our best to answer, I guess.
Yeah, we've tried to be pretty responsive during the main segment, but now, like, we're just reading chat.
Yeah, yeah. So shoot whilst carrying a soldier. I highly doubt it, Steph. I think soldier that this is out. I don't think he'll be able to shoot while carrying.
I think if you noticed while they were carrying the soldier, it didn't limit his movement. And carrying has to have some penalty. So if it's not going to limit movement, it's got to take shooting off. Maybe a perk. That's a really good idea.
That's a possibility as well.
What do I think of workshop maps? I am so excited for mod support. And we don't know a lot about mod support, which is why we haven't talked about it a ton. But I think that there will be some community designed maps that are spectacular. And I hope that there's an easy way to plug them into the regular campaign.
The greatest thing I think about the mod support and the procedurally generated maps is the way they're using the patchwork quilt style of procedural generation. That means that players don't have to create entire maps. If a player creates a piece, a tile, effectively, that fills X by X, that piece can be slotted in to create structures, a building, for instance, or a park, or a whatever it might be, that can occupy one of those slots on a patchwork quilt, which means that, maybe eventually user-created terrain could be added to the base game. Yeah. Actually be picked up by Firaxis. There's huge potential there. Huge potential.
GR Sperm, about prone snipers. I think it'd be neat. We haven't seen anything. We have no information, so this is purely speculative. But I think it'd be neat if they added a steady aim mechanic and the steady aim animation was laying down for a sniper. And it would be that easy to do. You use your turn to steady aim, your sniper lays down. Next turn, you can stand up and run if you want, or you can take that steadied shot.
Yeah, and I think that would be a really great way to increase the aim of snipers. The marksman, I believe it is, may have effect. That would actually be a really great way to implement the nature of a marksman, especially during the ambush phase of concealment. But once again, we haven't seen a marksman in action, and we haven't seen, IGN hasn't released the Meet the Marksman article yet, so maybe we learn a little bit about that when IGN comes out with the next bit.
Pictus, I've been reading your question. I'm trying to interpret it. Do you mean... you pointed that question right at me instead of at both of us, so I don't know if it's about the game or if it's about me personally. But if you're talking about the game, I think that there are some outlying areas in XCOM that aren't in the Advent City, and I think you will, picking up public support and funding from those areas, I think will be super important. And if you're asking about me, I'm not sure what context you mean that in, so ask your question again.
That's true. That's true.
So,
would you approve on a temporary usable vehicles like an APC or gyrocopter? Zaphod, I don't think so, because of the nature of the situation. APCs are open warfare. Gyrocopters are big and noisy. I don't think that sort of thing would be useful. I imagine we'll see jetpacks again. I think they'll make a triumphant return for Z-level movement, but I don't think there'll be actual vehicles.
Ixidor, I think that percent chance to hit on shots, I think that it is an integral part of making an XCOM game feel like an XCOM game, and I think it needs to stay in. I think that little bit of what do I do if I fail is part of the decision-making that makes the game feel like XCOM to me, and I hope that they keep it in. I think they should keep it in.
Absolutely. Yep. I agree with that 100%.
Suihausha, do I think there will be a cost associated or limiting factor on how much loot you can get from a mission? I'm almost certain the limiting factor is how much loot your surviving soldiers can carry out. And that's going to make the game feel a lot more like XCOM's fighting from the shadows and the underdog and sneaking around and not like the super powerful entity, and I think it's good.
Yeah. Pitkus asks, so can you get public support is what I meant. All right, so Pitkus, it's been hinted at that the whole concept of the game is you are trying to drum up a resistance against the aliens. So yes, I believe you will get public support, and that may change the way the maps play out. Maybe civilians help you on the maps. Maybe infiltrating is easier because the civilians turn a blind eye to XCOM because you're popular in the area, something to that effect. But I don't think you'll get external help in the form of governmental bodies or anything like that. I think it'll more be story implemented than gameplay implemented support.
Mountain Gaming, did they change it to 1 Overwatch shot per alien? I'm hoping, and now this trailer was a little bit doctored, and so we don't know if it's representative of real gameplay. But I'm hoping that when a person moves through Overwatch, your soldiers will shoot one at a time until it's dead, and that any remaining Overwatches will be remaining for further soldiers. So that would work with what we saw. The closest soldier fired first, killed his target, and so the other soldier was able to fire at the second thing that moved. I'm hoping that if that first soldier had missed, the second one would pick up that target. We don't know about that yet. We just don't know. But if they intend the concealment phase to be super powerful, that's one way to make Overwatch be a lot more reliable. And I hope that that's what they did.
The only other way that works, like given the gameplay scenario, if that is representative of gameplay, is that you overwatch the closest target. And even that gives you the tactical option to flank around, set up, 3 different soldiers closest to 3 different aliens to shoot 3 different guys. I don't think you're ever going to be in a position where you are forced to use all your overwatches on a single target, at least during the ambush phase. We got next. Do you think features such as jetpacks should have an impact on your ability to remain concealed? Absolutely, Tom Chubby. Yeah. I imagine that anything that makes noise, grenades, explosives, objective destroying, anything at all, jetpacks that makes noise will break you out of concealment.
So we've got, this is again, that's something we have to speculate about. We don't even know that jetpacks exist. But if they do, I assume that it's going to be very clearly defined when you're looking at that item and reading what it does in the strategy layer. It's going to be very clearly defined that leaving the ground breaks concealment for your entire squad.
Yeah. Yep.
I saw an Advent soldier gun butt a civilian in the face. Thoughts about Advent-civilian relationship and Advent media corporations? Not certain. I think that we saw that gun butt. I think they put that in there very, very on purpose, because I think that the Advent are playing a propaganda game, but they might not be particularly good at it. The devs talk about the way they've designed the city and the look of the city, which is very patches of bright color and very clean and just a little bit unnatural. And Garth DeAngelis says that was on purpose. They wanted the city to feel like what aliens think humans want, but they can't get it quite right. And I think we see the same thing in the Advent. We're having Celebration Day because you love us, we're Advent, we're here to protect you, not hurt you. And then the instant trouble breaks out, we gun butt a civilian in the face. Because that's not, my deep programming in the back of my mind, my subconscious, is punch humans.
I think that I think you're exactly right. I think that the Advent and the aliens are keeping the peace through just propaganda. And when XCOM comes in and starts to fight the aliens and the alien species show up and start tongue-lashing people and firing plasma weapons around, that's going to Advent, humans, so chase you all away, just try and clear the combat zone so that the propaganda that we're trying to spread, because that's what we're doing, we're trying to drum up a resistance. I think they're trying to eliminate that as well.
Steph Games, can we do air assaults like the aliens did with our cities? Has anything like that been announced? We know zero about the strategic layer other than the XCOM base is mobile. It's in a repurposed alien craft. That is all we know. I think it would be a neat mechanic. What I was saying I wanted for XCOM2, I've been saying this for a long time, is I want to play the aliens side of the game. And if we get to do airstrikes and send our little UFOs out and they intercept us, so I am literally playing the alien side of the game, that would be great. I'd be super excited about that, but I have no idea if that's true.
What else have we got? Do you think will Shen he's a head in a jar? I don't think he will. I think Shen will be gone. I think Valen may make a reappearance. She was quite young in the original XCOM. But Shen, he was already well into his, 60s, 70s. It's 20 years in the future. I don't think Shen will be back. Maybe he's referenced, but I don't think he'll be back.
I am secretly hoping that Shen will be rolling around in a wheelchair and will just be old as dirt and just crotchety and grumpy. or possibly married to Dr. Volland. Those, like, one of those two things I really secretly desire in my soul.
Anything else being asked that we want to answer here?
Okay, it seems like the questions are slowing down a little bit.
Okay.
I did watch Death Watch. I did watch that section over and over to see why that civilian got hit. There are 2 civilians. When XCOM comes up, most of them run away, and 2 run toward to see what's going on. And those, like, one gets shoved and the other gets just clocked in the jaw. So they did provoke Advent a little bit, but clocking an unarmed civilian in the jaw with your gun butt is a bit aggressive anyway.
Do you think you can capture cities and hire your reputation? So you can, I think you will never capture and retake territory. I don't think that's the kind of war you're fighting. I think you'll drum up resistance cells, and there'll be some kind, like, this is pure speculation, but I think, like, you'll have a tactical map, it'll show you the world, and you'll be able to see, like, the level of resistance, the popularity of XCOM in that area, and that'll impact on, you know, the aliens' ability to mobilize resources and things like that. But I don't think you'll ever capture anything. I think XCOM will be very much a one-ship operation, if you will.
I'm worried that you're right, Lollash, because I really want the strategic layer to be capturing. And maybe we're not, like, physically capturing with military power, but maybe it's represented as whether our propaganda has succeeded and those areas support XCOM now. But that's a mechanic I want. We have no indication whether it's going to exist, but it's a mechanic I want. Which is,
that's what I was sort of aiming to say.
Yeah.
Is, like, you'll have a meter like you have now with your panic meter, except it'll work in reverse. So it'll start no support for XCOM, and as you drum up support in that area, it'll increase, and eventually you will have, you know, you'll be the majority support, the popular support, and that'll provide you with certain benefits in the area, and it'll be like owning it, because you have that presence, you have that popularity, but it won't. And once again, pure speculation. This is just
that's a mechanic I hope exists. I hope that's the strategic layer of the game, and I missed it's scrolled off the screen. I don't remember the name. Pick Gifts. I hope there's base building. Once again, we've seen very little of the strategic layer. Mountain Gaming, how many XCOM soldiers can you have? We've seen very little of the strategic layer. The next video we need is a strategic layer overview, because we just got a tactical layer overview. And we will do another video like this as soon as we have info.